Hi, I'm Molly. I teach English. I speak English. I love English. I love the English language. I think I always have. Well, I know I have for as long as I've been learning it, which has been for 43 years. Since I was in utero, I've been listening to English. I've been listening to English songs. I've been listening to books on tape or records on tape. I grew up in a world where English was spoken and loved, and I benefited from that. I also benefited from being an only child and having a tape recorder as a friend. I had friends, but I also was lonely a lot. And my parents were teachers, and so they always had the latest technology, which in the 1980s was a tape recorder, and then in the 90s was a camcorder, was a video cassette recorder. And me and my friends would use these as tools or creative toys, basically, and we would record videos of ourselves pretending we were figure skaters, dancing to the Beatles, putting on our imaginary MTV Music Awards with our our own selections that we recorded onto cassette tapes, mixtapes that we played in the background as we recorded ourselves hosting our own MTV Video Awards, MTV Video Awards. Anyways, these were the kind of things we did to entertain ourselves in the 80s and 90s when I was growing up. And I think it was a strange time to be a kid, but there were good things about it. And one of those things was that we did have this technology. Well, we had the ability to record our voices and record us doing things on camera, but we didn't have the ability to share it with anybody except ourselves. So what we would often do is we would record ourselves, and then we would watch it and we would laugh at what we'd made. And I think this is interesting because I noticed in my classes that people of different ages have different, they feel differently about how they're speaking. And I can't help but notice that there are certain tendencies. And one thing I'm starting to notice is that, well, there's a lot to say about this. So what do I want to say? What's the most important thing I want to get out today? I think I'll just skip to the thing that I think is the most important thing. I think we can be really, really hard on ourselves. And I think there is something that's one of the most important parts of language learning that is kind of underappreciated and undervalued and not spoken about enough. And that is what's going on in our brains when we are speaking English as a foreign language or as English language learners. What's going on in our head, especially with the voice in our head that is evaluating how good we're doing as we're speaking. And I think we haven't talked enough about that voice that's in our heads in the language learning community. Because if we put our attention on that voice, the voice of the censor, the voice of the critic, the voice of the one who's watching how we're speaking, it's happening right now in my head as I try to make this into a video that I'll share with people. Do I fully trust that voice? And am I paying attention to that voice constantly as I'm trying to produce meaningful sentences that go together into a meaningful paragraph and a meaningful 10 minutes of video? What happens when I pay too much attention to that voice, to the voice in my head that's monitoring how correctly I'm speaking? Like I'm doing it right now more than I normally would because I'm aware of it. But at least I'm aware of it, and so I'm noticing it. And I think that's a good thing. I think it's very important to notice that voice in the head that is watching us as we speak English. And it's important to notice it because it's not always right, but it gets better at its job. So the better we get at the foreign language, the better the censor that's watching how we're speaking gets, and it's able to catch things that it thinks are not quite right. But the thing to notice is that the thing that's so important to remember is that nobody's ever speaking perfectly. Nobody's ever speaking without error. There's always room for improvement. I could edit this video. I should edit this video, right? If I, you know, and I'm a native English speaker. So that's one of the reasons I think it's very important to get feedback about your English, and to not to question whether or not you're sure that your evaluation of your English is correct. Don't be so sure that when you think your English is terrible, it's terrible. Because there's one thing I notice, and it's pretty much the same with every student. The exception would prove the rule with this, that the better the English is of a certain student, the worse they think their English is. And how good or how bad they think their English is has more to do with how high their expectations are. And it has more to do with, it's more influenced by how loud that censor is in their brain, and how much attention they give, and how much credence or how much value they give to what it's saying. Do they trust it or do they question it? So there's so much to say about this, and it's interesting because as I'm doing this video, I'm overly conscious of that voice, and I'm trying to make what I'm saying as, really perfect, and it's making me mess up. And so that's what happens when you're learning a foreign language as well. So one of the really important tools that we have, back to the beginning of this video, one of the really important tools that we can use is tape recorders, is Zoom, our videos of ourselves, or audio recordings of ourselves speaking, as well as talking to people who will be loving and generous and helpful in their feedback, and not only speaking with people who are looking for our mistakes, but instead speaking with people who are looking for our strengths and highlighting what we're doing well, right? Because we don't necessarily need to feed the voice of that censor, or the one who's telling us where we could have done better. We don't need to give it more. We don't need to amplify the volume of that voice often. We need to turn down the volume of that voice that says, was that right? Is that wrong? And instead turn up the volume of the voice that says, I don't know if it's perfect, but I'm just going to say it because my goal is to communicate and my goal is to connect. And the more I speak and the more I just try, the better my English is going to get. And so that's what I wanted to share today. Sorry for the sound of the lawnmower, if you heard it. But I think this is an important topic. And so talking to yourself, so a tool and a tactic, a technique that is so helpful in this is talking to yourself, using your phone. And maybe some of you did this when you were kids as well. Talk to yourself. Maybe you recorded yourself on a little tape recorder. But in our pockets, we have computers, and they're not only capable of connecting us with the world, but they're also capable of just recording our voices. Some people hate the sound of their own voice. Okay, so maybe this isn't for you. Maybe writing is something that's a more useful tool for you. But basically what I would love to encourage you to do is to use the creative power of your voice to create things that have meaning for you, and not worrying so much about whether it's correct or incorrect. Because over time, doing that repeatedly, whether it's journaling or whether it's speaking, what ends up happening is the censor, the one who's watching for mistakes and shuts you up every time you make one, that voice starts to become more silent. It's a way to turn down the volume of the critic in the head. And you don't have to share these things with anybody. It's for the process. It's for you And for your development of, it's for the development of your confidence and it's for you. So don't take my word for it. Try it out. Let me know what you think. Don't be afraid if it feels really weird at first. But if you do it 2 or 3 days in a row, and the hardest thing can be getting, setting up a time and doing it. You might want to set an alarm for yourself and do it every day for 5 minutes. But you may notice by the 3rd or the 4th day, whether it's speaking to yourself or writing something short on your phone or on Google Docs or whatever, you may find that it gets easier and it's something you look forward to doing, because it's a way to connect with yourself, with what you want to say, with what you think, with how you feel. And it can even be a way for you to gain privacy. Maybe the people you live with don't speak the language that you're learning, don't speak English. And so it's a way to speak out loud, to say the things you want to say that you can't say to them, but maybe you want to say to them. Or it can be a way to, journal in a way that feels a little more private, because you don't have to worry that anybody's going to read it because they don't understand it. So that can be another, that can be another thing that another incentive to get you to do it. There's a lot of good reasons to do it, but whatever works for you. I would just say give it a shot and see what happens. And you've nothing to lose and you've a lot to gain. And I think I'll leave it there. So please like the video, subscribe, and have a wonderful day. See you next week. Bye.